Call the meeting to order. Has attendance been taken?
Yes.
Attendance has been taken. Can I have an approval of the motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved, Judy Wilson, G.
Thank you. And when you make your motions and seconders, if we can just state your name so it's better for record keeping, that's great. Thank you. Judy?
Second, David.
Thank you very much. Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? We have an agenda. Are there any conflicts of interest to disclose as per the agenda here tonight or any items circulated? In the absence of any agendas, which could be conflicts of interest. To declare, we shall move on, and I'll also make one other statement. If during the meeting, as we're having, involved discussion, if people could keep their phones, unless there's something emergency happening, away from themselves, turned over and be engaged in the conversation, I think that's probably a better thing for us to do. Now moving on to what I believe is my favorite, the consent agenda. We have items A through E on the consent agenda, starting with the approval of minutes dated September 5th, 2024, September 19th, 2024. We have the Community Development Committee report, the Economic Expansion Committee report, the Governance Committee report, and Public Safety Committee report. So could I have a motion?
So moved, Marty Forsyth.
Second it, Bob Howell.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carried. Now we're on to presentations. And we'll start with the York Sunbury Search and Rescue. Brad Parker and Co.
All right, good evening, directors. Thank you all for having me here at your meeting tonight. I appreciate the chance to come and speak to all of you as a group, and I'll mention something as well. But at any point, if I bring up something you're like, oh, this would be great to talk about with our, local council, EMO group, anything like that, we're always happy to come and talk more search and rescue. We're easy to find. We're usually in Orange. I thought Matt Pascal here tonight. He's the search manager with me. That's probably one of the fun of it. Correct anything I misspeak on. So next slide, please.
We are fun, by the way.
Yeah, so, that's the wrong slide, just back up. Anyway, so, YSSR is part of the New Brunswick Ground Search and Rescue Association, which I also represent, which is 300 volunteers. York Sunbury itself is about 60 operational at any given point in time. Next slide, please. A brief history about York Sunbury Search and Rescue. So in 1983, there's a letter published in the Daily Gleaner at the time by the RCMP looking for folks who are interested in forming an organized search and rescue group. This was in response to a number of incidents where there wasn't an organized response that could be deployed to go help look for people who were lost in the woods. 1983, YSSR is incorporated. By the 2010s, every New Brunswick police agency, so that's RCMP and all the municipal agencies, as well as EMO, have memorandums of understanding with NHSERA, who York Sunbury is a part of, that just kind of helped to formalize and strengthen those agreements. By 2015, the first national standard for ground search and rescue efficiency was published, and we adhere to that here in New Brunswick as well. Next slide, please. So in Canada, search and rescue takes a number of forms. The main purpose, of course, is to save lives. Next point. Lives aren't just saved through direct response. There's a huge prevention aspect. I think a lot of people have probably heard of Hug a Tree, which is kind of the premier program from Adventure Smart. Adventure Smart is Canada's national prevention program. So Hug a Tree is for young kids. Adventure Smart is for the older kids. There's also Paddle Smart and yeah. So a couple different ones for different outdoor sports and whatnot. Response is obviously the thing that I think most folks have come to mind. And then there's coordination, because even the largest search and rescue team in the province searches New Brunswick. We all know how much woods there is here. It means that you can quickly need a tremendous amount of resources to effectively get out there and do what you need. And of course, ground search and rescue is the responsibility of the police agency. We're deeply involved. We help them, but we're never the lead group. We're always there to help and assist. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that, There we go. So we only respond at the request of the AHJ, so the police agency, EMO, et cetera. We don't self-activate. We've gotten questions before, we're saying like, why aren't you out here looking for so-and-so they're missing? 9.999 times out of 10, it's because we haven't been asked for it yet. And that can be a variety of reasons. Ultimately, it's the police's incident. They decide who they call, what they want to use. Sometimes there's just not enough evidence to suggest that this person's in the woods. You know, if I get upset with Matt and I storm out of here with my wallet, keys, phone, car, and drive off, Matt might not know where I am, might be worried about me, but I might not be in the woods. Versus if I take off, bolt across the highway into Odell, and I don't have my phone, wallet, keys, then maybe there's a little more of a reason to believe that Brad's in trouble and in the woods, and we could use some walking pilots to go find him. Next slide, please. So the structure. So there's 9 teams in New Brunswick currently. We're each tied to 1 or more RSCs. Of course, York Sunbury here in Fredericton, we're tied to you guys here in RSC 11, Capital Region. There's also a very strong culture of mutual aid. Like I mentioned, it's almost impossible to have a search that goes, you know, once you hit that 12-hour mark, I'd say you're almost always calling in at least one neighboring team, if not more of them. So we're a regional asset, but we get all around the province. And of course, for our duties. Next slide, please. When it comes to collaboration, here's just 2 examples I plucked from my recent experience where I was deeply involved. Another one in RSC 11, but the next one could very well be. Last fall, and these are both, you know, well publicized in the news. So you might have seen reference to them. Henderson Lake down in St. John. We had 9 agencies. So we had St. John Police, Fire, we had Public Safety K9, we had EMOs, RPAS, and we had 5 different GSAR teams, all of which working together. I just come from the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure's RADCOM Interoperability Conference, which is a mouthful to say, where they talked about how unique New Brunswick and the Atlantic region is to have one radio network that so many different groups can be part of. And this Henderson Lake really solidified that for me when we had those 9 agencies all on the same channel. So that when there's information coming in about, hey, we found it, we're here, you know, St. John Police's bikes are coming this way, fire's gonna meet us here, the ambulance is over here. I didn't list A and B on the list there. But that was a great success story. He was found alive. I should live at that point. Same thing in Doketown. 10-year-old boy went missing, also found alive and well. And you can see there we had 10 different groups, including local ATV club. So there was a huge outpouring of support in there. It just goes to show how much that we, not just Grand Search but New Brunswickers, can come together to run out into the woods and try and find folks who are lost or in trouble there. Next slide, please. So what do we actually bring when we get called? You know, why do police choose to call us in the first place? Next slide. The big thing is searchers. So like I said, York Sunbury, we have 60+ searchers. We as a group are ready to respond 24/7, 365 days a year. I have had a Christmas Day call up now. It was the Charlotte County windstorm. Yep. Prior to that, I've had Christmas Eve, where, you know, I drove 2 or 3 hours to the search site. The gentleman missing decided that he was done being lost, walked out of the woods into a squad car that was waiting for him. We were patrolling for him. So great turnaround, drove back home. Perfectly fine by me. If people want to find themselves, you know, just out of fear once I've shown up, that's even better. And then we do more than just find people in the woods as well. So we're oftentimes involved in evidence searches, or in like scene security, working with evacuations and emergency situations, stuff like that. Really, we're all weather eyes and ears. So every searcher is going to be, actually go to the next set of points there. They're always familiar with navigation. It's really embarrassing if search and rescue volunteers get themselves lost, as well as ICS, radio communications and first aid. So we've staffed roadblocks here in Fredericton for floods. We've gone to ice storms, snowstorms, anywhere where you need people to go out and look at something, do something, talk to someone, see things. That's a skill set we're well equipped to provide. Next slide. So our command unit, that's ours there. You see in the background. It's our truck and trailer, our pride and joy. And what's our search management team, which Matt and I are part of, deployed anywhere in the province to manage search and rescue volunteers on incident. The big thing that brings for us is computing, so mapping, seeing where we are, putting people in the right spot, printing maps, radios, generators, salvable internet, as well as ropes, flashlights, all the stuff we need to put people into the woods and then take the road back out of the woods. And then search managers themselves, will have ICS 200, as well as search management specific training, including lost person behavior. Again, we're obviously really killer for a lot of people, but I think we do a pretty good job at slotting into anywhere you need us. We're just pretty eager to come and help. Next slide. So that's an example. I don't even know how old that search is. It's been on the example slide deck since before I joined the team, I think.
2012, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. But so that's just an example of, you see different colored line representing different colored assets. At an area performing, grid searches, track searches, anything that has a GPS in it, right? Again, we talk about working with ATV clubs. I've had people email me their Polaris ride command share of a section they did, and I can pull it into our mapping software. So, because it's great to say we went out and searched. It's even better we can show it to the police and the family, hey, here's where we searched, right? Every one of these lines is 1, 2, 3, 4 searchers, going back and forth through this 100-acre section of woods. And, we'll have things like, here's this picture of, some bird bones that we found, right? If we found, the dispersed springs of an eagle, we're gonna find any clue relating to this person we're looking for. Next slide. Project Lifesaver. Hopefully some folks here have heard before, but if you haven't, this is a prevention and a response option that York Sunbury has. So it's a small watch size transceiver that vulnerable members of the population will voluntarily enroll to wear. And it puts out a signal that our receivers, those big, the little alien with the big line on the picture there, which allows us to track them much faster. You can imagine, again, someone takes off from their house, and you roll to the house, try to find where they are. Well, you've got a whole circle to start looking in. You pull up with the Project Lifesaver antenna. You already know, hey, this is, Toby, he's 9. He loves sirens and fire trucks and whatnot. He's not gonna hide. He's probably gonna come running to that. He's a boulder when he gets stressed out. You pull out the Project Lifesaver locator. You kind of start sweeping it around. You go, beep, 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 beep. Oh, he's that way. So immediately you've eliminated the vast majority of the circle. And instead of fanning out, you can more or less chase them down. So it's put onto children with autism and elderly folks with dementia and Alzheimer's. I always get them mixed up. And it's supported through social development for the children. For the adults, it's self-funded. There is some fundraising the team does to provide that. And then I think I heard someone say the word Lions Club here earlier this morning. It's this evening, every time they were at. And groups like Lions Club, Rotary, they do a great job of supporting us, that we don't have to charge the ongoing maintenance fees for those devices. And it's also deployed all across the Atlantic provinces. So we were the first team in New Brunswick for quite some time to have it. Miramichi just 2 or 3 weeks ago came online with it. So now we've got more footprint here in New Brunswick. PEI has it across their province, and so is Nova Scotia. So it's a really great little feather in our cap as a region as well. Next slide, please. So current operating picture. So in 2023, so last year, YSSR put just about 2,300 hours into SAR incidents alone. And depending on, what you value an hour of police officer time at, whether it's straight time or overtime, that's, $118,000 to $234,000 worth of salary time alone. And that's no equipment, that's no training, that's just the time on incidents. So there's another 8,344 hours, and that's everything else that goes into maintaining our team. The average is about 119 per member. There's probably not a whole lot to look at the average. We've got a lot of folks that get 300, 400, 500 hours a year, and then some folks that are just 50, 60, 70. But it all adds up, and there's no shortage of work to do to keep a team like this going. And I believe of that 2,300 or so hours on incidents, YSSR was about 1/4 of the total hours put on incidents in 2023. With Fredericton Police Force, here in Fredericton alone, we did 717 hours. And I think the incident we had the largest number on was 27. And I mean, the detectives and the sergeants we work with are always very appreciative when we get those numbers out. They'll say, hey, we've got a hard enough time getting patrols filled, just given resourcing constraints. And so for you guys to pull 27 people out of here at once, we couldn't cover the area that we need to in the time required without that.
I think one of the key things to really note there too is every one of these hours are volunteer hours. So anyone around the table, any of the directors that are engaged in volunteer aspects, volunteerism is down across the board. There is no compensation 99% of the gear that members are using out in the field is purchased by them at their own cost. There is a little bit of cost recovery for mileage, meals at provincial rates, but barring that, all of our members are doing this out of the goodness of their heart for the community.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is a little bit of a cool factor to it. I know the first time I got to go to a crime scene and duck under the yellow, CSI tape. The officers that were doing scene security were like, I don't know who you are, what you do. I was just told to let you in. And the site we were at, there was 6 or 7 squad cars doing site security. Which is obviously, a decent percentage of the on-call folks at any given time. And then we had probably 20 or 30 folks out crawling through, hands and knees, kind of checking every blade of grass, calling over the CSI guys, like, oh, hey, we found this thing, oh, hey, we found that thing, keeping him busy. So it's enjoyable and rewarding. I'm ready to give back. Next slide, please. We're also working with the Office of the Fire Marshal and the New Brunswick Association of Fire Chiefs on moving more into like a remote rescue or a rescue only. Right now, we predominantly do search or evidence, then rescue. But of course, with technology changing, 10 years ago, if you walked, to the edge of the pavement, you didn't have any cell phone service. Now, the number of places I get to, I'm like, oh wow, I'm surprised I have cell phone service here. And then, of course, we have the next generation on the horizon in a literal sense, where the amount of ways that you can get in contact with a satellite, newer iPhones, newer Android phones, I assume newer Samsung phones, can all natively communicate with satellites. And then you've got folks like Starlink that are looking to basically make it so that you cannot anywhere in the world be outside of cell phone service, which is great. It needs to change the way we work. Because it used to be that if you got, you broke your leg in the woods, you had to wait until your wife, husband, friend, whoever realized, oh, Matt didn't come back from a hunting trip today. He's supposed to be back at 3 o'clock. It's 6:47 here now. Well, maybe I'll go look for him. Well, I didn't find him. Well, I'll call his buddies. And then next thing you know, it's 10 o'clock at night. And then they call police. And then we get the call out. And then we go start looking. Meanwhile, Matt's been sitting out in the woods with a broken leg for 10 hours. Versus even today, with a minimal investment in technology, if anything, Matt can break his leg and almost immediately get in contact with emergency service saying, hey, I'm right here. I'm 16 kilometers from the nearest paved road in the middle of Nowheresville. But here I am. I've got a broken leg. Help me. So this is kind of the change in direction that we're kind of preparing for. Next slide. Like I said too, it's more than just searching. So there's a picture of our command post up in the Chaleur region during their big ice storm in 2017. Some other things we've been involved in, just kind of noteworthy. The Scotts Nursery fire of 2009, we were called to help maintain the perimeter around there while the fire marshal investigation spun up there. In 2018 and 19, we had bad floods here in Fredericton, of course. We were out helping with barricades and road management there. Telling people you can't drive through, there's water. And they say, no, I'm going to swim. You say, okay, I'm just going to wait here. I'm going to call the police. They'll come take you while they tow your car out of, underneath the walking bridge. You got the Charlotte County windstorm of last Christmas. Of course, I know there were folks, all the way up here until like the Harvey, Tracy area, even that were without power, but kind of towards the coast, they were in a very rough spot. Even 7 days after the storm had hit, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, they're still without power. And so we were down with the EMO and the fire departments, going door to door to make sure that folks weren't entirely frozen to death on Christmas. And then almost right after that, we were shipped down to Cape Breton. So, again, out of province, that collaboration spirit, we're down at Cape Breton, again, checking people who are this time snowed into their house. I've got pictures of folks, shoveling driveways out so that people in, wheelchairs, stretchers, whatnot can, get from their front door to the edge of the road to get taken to appointments or to have, medical supplies and food taken to them. So anyone, again, like I said, we're more than happy to go talk to anyone's, municipal EMO group. But anytime we were like, God, we need some more people like here that can do things for us, that we can kind of just say, here's a problem, go solve it, and not think too much about it. Whether it's containment, integrity, evacuation laws checks. And I think for everyone who wears orange, the second we know something's going on, we're sitting like, okay, do they need us? Do they need us? What can we do? Next slide, please. Here's a selection of pictures. So we've got one. This is down at one of those flood years. That's Hurricane Arthur. Well, I don't think we were terribly involved in Arthur, were we? Here is some fundraising activity, and this is a search up towards that with the Bear Island search. Probably one of, if not the largest searches in New Brunswick.
Definitely in recent history, and just a keynote on that one is we referenced, or Brad referenced, this winter we were asked to go into Nova Scotia. Of course, Newfoundland was asked to come in as well. They were in a very dire straits there. I mean, there were snowbanks taller than islands. Right, elderly folks were not able to get out of their houses. But there's other scenarios too, where we've gone to Nova Scotia for 2 operations that I know of, for missing folks. And in fact, we had PEI in for this search. That's how long this was a 5-day search. Every resource in New Brunswick had been exhausted. I mean, there's only so many hours that you can go, before you're just, you can't move anymore.
Yeah.
Gentleman was found alive and well, better than most of the searchers. They ended, I guess, the mosquitoes liked us better than they liked him, which was really good for him. But it's just that, as Brad said, that collaboration, it's unique to see, how communities come together directly, but it's also neat to see how, interprovincially the resources can be, moved when needed.
Yeah, and I think, again, within the Atlantic provinces where we are, smaller than some other provinces combined, we've got a pretty good history with PEI and Nova Scotia especially working together. And then from a national lens too, there's programs that are being put in place, humanitarian workforce, for example, which is aimed to make it even easier to bring search and rescue resources from across the country anywhere they need. We almost had folks that were just waiting for flights to get straightened out to fly up to Labrador City, having like Goose Bay to help manage some of those wildfire evacuations this summer. Unfortunately, flights were delayed because of the cybersecurity incident. And then fortunately, the fire was turned around quick enough that we didn't end up with boots on the ground, but it works in reverse as well. So if there ever is an issue with New Brunswick, I know Nova Scotia seems to take the majority of the hits for us, but the next time there is an event in New Brunswick that requires more search and rescue folks than can be mustered within the province, we have recourse to pull people in from BC in theory if we need them. Next slide, please. So money, the fun part. So like Matt alluded to earlier, right now, YSSR as well as all teams in New Brunswick, we build the agencies who activate us on a cost recovery basis, basically food and fuel. We don't make money on callouts. We're independent. We're nonprofit. We're not part of the government. A lot of people think we are. The number of times folks have joked to me about the overtime pay I'm getting, I've gone, joke's on you, I'm doing this for free. Or they think that, we're like a fire department or we're like, anything else. Like, nope, we're no different from many different other groups. We're not part of the government. We work very closely with police agencies, that kind of thing, which means we're dependent on fundraising and grants. I know the Union of Municipalities had reached out to me in my provincial role as well. So I'm not sure how much this has been disseminated around, but there was a long-standing informal grant program that the provincial association worked with EMO and GMB on. That's been called into question. We're working to iron out and go, listen, if the problem that's informal, let's formalize it. One of those items as well has been that they put out a tender for a consultant to come in and kind of review how things work in New Brunswick, compare us to different jurisdictions across Canada. Next point. As a provincial association, things should be working as is until at least next spring. The bidding for that consultancy is reviewed. YSSR stays in a pretty good spot. Obviously, if the provincial association disappears and dries up, they'll put a little more stress on us. So if you want to, next slide. So the provincial association pays for the liability insurance, because of course you can't do anything these days without threat of being sued. Some joint training, some software licenses, as well as the board of directors for the provincial association and that admin. So those are the costs that the provincial association currently bears. Next slide. Each team, YSR included, we have to train our members, purchase and maintain all of our equipment, including the trucks that you see, storage facilities, recruitment and fundraising, and my last point, prevention as well. So almost everything you hear me talk about, going out to schools, doing those hugger trees, buying the trucks, maintaining the trucks, finding a place to store the truck, buying the laptop, GPSs, ropes, flashlights, all the things, all the toys.
Yeah, you can think of equipment that we utilize on a rescue operation.
Yeah.
It would be the compass.
Yeah, so we fundraise really hard for that. And then like Matt said as well, members are bringing, because search and rescue for the most part is just unexpected hiking in the woods in high vis. So whether it's, pants, snowshoes, boots, 3 or 4 different kinds of jackets for the seasons, that stuff that members bring on their own. Next slide. So the kinds of things that, we're always looking for help with. First off, somehow we're a secret I don't know how, we're so secretive. You know, I know folks, I remember when I was a kid, whenever I'd be late somewhere, because I was frequently late, there'd be a joke like, oh, we don't know where you were, we were gonna call search and rescue. And it wasn't until I joined this that I realized just how disconnected so many people are from how exactly search and rescue is and how it operates. Like I said, you know, the fact that we're not part of the government, that we're just a nonprofit group that's involved and wants to help out. So, like I said, more than happy to come talk to any council or other committees, either part of the RSC or part of your local government entity, to talk about who we are and what we do. And anything that you guys can do to help us, just share that word about, again, who we are and what we do. That's appreciated. I don't want to know a point that says monetary support. That's always appreciated, but as well as, you know, we don't want money to Scrooge McDuck into a pile of loonies and tooties and $5 bills. A lot of the big things for us are acquiring vehicles. Of course, trucks are expensive. No, we don't put a whole lot of miles on our trucks. You know, I think our 2006 command post has 44,000 on it after 20 years. So, you know, folks who have municipal fleet vehicles that are, you know, 90% through their life cycle, we can hit that last 10%, make it last years and years for us. Same thing with storage spaces. So right now we're still a little bit split up. We've got some storage, we've got like a storage locker, we've got a garage that we rent, that we've managed to squeeze all of our truck and our trailer into. And it works, but of course, you know, we'd love to have, you know, a larger space, a more condensed space. I know, Matt, one of our training officers, we're always kind of ping ponging around, to find classroom space for, training events.
Even outdoors, right? Like you have to imagine if we're going out to do training, you have to be very conscientious, of where we're gonna go training. You don't wanna cause panic in the public. And we've got, you know, we use the UMB woodlot quite a bit, but it's really hard to find large wooded open areas that aren't private property, or find landowners that are willing to, because you don't have the contacts, to say, hey, you can come out, use my back 40, no problem, do training, respect your property, leave no trace behind, same as, you know, if you go hiking in general. But it's hard to find really anywheres to run training and do real world scenarios. It's easy enough when someone's missing, right? The police call us out, we're gonna go where we need to go, we're gonna do everything within the confines of what can be done. But to do training and, you know, to go out and knock on someone's door, hey, can we go through your backyard just to do training? It doesn't really fit. So we're always looking for, if any municipalities have, you know, green spaces that we may not know about, we'd love to hear. And I think Brad's big point, you know, in referencing non-monetary supports, there's a lot of in-kind services that people don't think of. We mentioned vehicles, whatnot, but anything that somebody can think of that, you know, they wanted to throw and say, hey, would something like this be of any use to you? We're always open, right? On the top point of that Brad really touched on, of we're not known, our biggest flaw is because what we do is tied to the police agency so much. We don't have the opportunity, at least in New Brunswick this time, to post every time we get an activation. So Brad was able to reference here, you know, we had loosely 2,500 hours of operations just in RSC 11 or the team based in RSC 11 last year. If I were to ask the directors around the table how many operations they had heard about or how many hours they knew had taken place, the number's probably quite reduced compared to that. And not because members are not tied into their communities, but we're in the shadows, right? And every search is treated as a criminal operation until it's known it's not. Because obviously if Johnny's missing, only Johnny knows why he's missing up until he's found, right? So that does limit us a lot and makes it hard for folks to know exist. And I will note, because Brad talked about myths about search and rescue, we don't line up in a great big line and walk through the woods. It is very much a science. Brad referenced lost person behavior. We call it the Search and Rescue Bible, where literally there are 40 subject categories. So there's an investigation that goes on in conjunction with police to identify, sorry, I'm kind of standing off behind some numbers here, to identify, you know, what the circumstances of the person being missing could be. It could be hiking, it could be hunter, it could be despondent, it could be mental health, it could be any number of things. And each individual category has specific tactics and patterns. We can tell you that for somebody who has dementia, you know, for the 25% will be found within this generalized zone, 75, 95%. And we'd love to do a presentation, actually tabletop something to show you. But realistically, it builds out the plan, right? Like, it doesn't mean that there's not abnormalities. We've had 83-year-old lady who could barely walk down the driveway to the mailbox. She definitely didn't go far, down 2.5 kilometers away, sitting on the lakeside. Happy as can be, but she certainly, for somebody who couldn't walk to the end of the driveway and check the mail, she hiked quite a ways straight through the woods. So there's a lot to it, but there's a lot of myths we'd love to, with more time, if you have interest, dispel as well. And just education, prevention, right, as you talked about.
I guess the one big myth that still comes up after all these years is about when you can report someone missing to the police. As soon as they're not where you think they should be, you're worried about them, that's when you can call. There was someone sitting down in Quistam Sits, and I know one of the comments I saw on the police department's post was, well, I thought they had to be gone 24 hours before you could report them in. Nope. As soon as someone's not where you think they are, where they should be, and you're worried about them, that's the time to call police, because the sooner that they can establish that, yep, they're missing. Yep, they're in a wilderness setting. Okay, now we call search and rescue. Now the volunteers are all putting their life on hold to jump in the car and rip off to whichever corner of the province they're going to today.
And happily
The
doing so.
process, yeah. Yeah, but.
But it takes that time, right? So the sooner that an activation starts, the better.
Yeah, we're much more of a marathon, than a sprint race, so, a quick search and rescue operation, like, if I leave home and back within 4 hours, that's quick.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's the last point I had. I think the last slide is just my, invitation for questions, so I'll take any questions, comments, insults.
We never dish those out.
We're a very complimentary group.
Yes.
It was a very good presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
It's very interesting.
Any other comments from the board? I will say I do hear of your organization quite frequently, so it's nice to hear some of the background of it as well, because not knowing exactly where it fits into some of the.
Not a lot of people engaged still.
Yeah. We have no place to go.
The old apple picker gets lost now.
Yeah.
Great time of year.
So where are you guys located at?
Like I said, we're kind of scattered right now. We have equipment that's stored in the basement at the Victoria Health Center. Then we have a garage space we rent down Ormuckville. So we kind of just, we ping pong where we find a spot to slide into. Our truck is currently parked behind one of the Fairfield Fire Department buildings. It summers outside, and then we have to kind of like Jenga it into the garage, park the trailer in, kind of back the truck around it. A little bit sketchy, but it works. Keeps it out of the ice and the wind and the rain.
Being a nonprofit, that's the biggest struggle we do have, right? Like the space that we have for our current vehicle, it is very much you back the trailer in the door, and then you kitty corner the truck between the rail of the door and the trailer to get it back into another space. That is the main reason it stays outside through the late spring to mid fall. But in the winter, again, unless we can go down and shovel, consistently, there's a delay getting it out as well. The space you rent isn't perfect, but it does, again, if you think about it, in a winter snow load on the roof, we wouldn't have a vehicle, we didn't have it, so we're very gracious to the organization we can rent through. But that's probably the next biggest thing that is truly a need, is somewhere central, to be able to respond to any of the locations in the CRSC where we can effectively store and secure the equipment inside. We have experienced in the past, our vehicle was stored outside and the cathode converter was cut off it, which is insane to think about when you're thinking of a vehicle that's marked on the side of it, search and rescue. It's not my personal vehicle sitting there.
Well, even Miramichi, their team, their vehicle was broken into and all the equipment stolen out of it. So it's unfortunate that, as a volunteer group, we have to spend so much time worried about how we're gonna squirrel things away and lock up and.
We're very lucky to that note that we park primarily at one of the fire stations. There's lots of sirens going in there. That's probably why we're so fortunate.
Any other questions, comments?
And if anything comes up afterwards, feel free to reach out, either through our website, social media, or Kelly can give you my contact information, and I'm always happy to talk about fish and rescue, so thanks so much for having me.
I think so.
So if there was say that child was lost, so can anyone want to volunteer to help you guys? To go
Yeah.
search?
Yeah, we're always taking volunteers. We encourage folks who are interested in becoming part of the team to join before someone's actively gone missing, because there's a lot of training that goes into becoming like a professional volunteer rescue responder. We do work with the police agency, so again, the Dogtown search with the ATV club. Obviously, the ATV club's not a structured part of our group. We go to the police officer in charge and say, hey, do you wanna use these guys on ATVs? Do you wanna use, we've had instances in the past where people have gone missing with connection to the base, and then suddenly you've got, half a
Two platoons.
two platoons showing up, all folks you can use, and so we'll work with, they're called convergent volunteers. We'll structure a little bit differently where we're not gonna task a convergent volunteer the same way we would, search rescue members, but we can use them on different types of tapping, so.
And to kind of add into that answer as well, all of our members pass every 2 years, they have to pass a criminal records check and volatile sector check. So it's one of the other things we bring when we come out to support police agencies or we're activated under EMO. All of our members are vetted. It's not a concern of, who's in the group or what have you is within the team. And that's where, as Brad said, realistically, if somebody shows up and wants to volunteer, there are times where they will be turned away or delayed, being brought into the search. But ultimately, that's the officer in charge from the police agency to make that determination. We won't turn anyone away, but they've got to approve them being added into the team for that operation. And again, because there's times we don't know what's going on.
You guys have sniff dogs or anything like that?
Yeah, there's been a number of different canine handlers, like civilian volunteers that have done, there's an RCMP standard for scent tracking. So they'll pass that, but we've had some in the past that have done, human remains detection or cadaver testing. There's also two, I think more than there used to be, because RCMP obviously has dogs, and now, JPS has 3 or 4. There now, a number. So yeah, and that's the blessing and the curse of being a volunteer organization is that it's a lot of what the members want to pursue. I know, again, here in Fredericton, especially with our RCMP's headquartered here, EMO's headquartered here, Fredericton Police obviously is headquartered here in Fredericton. So we're almost spoiled when it comes to drones, for example. There's teams that are, farther out, they don't have everyone's headquarter building here with their stable full of pilots. And so those teams have said, hey, we don't always get the drone support we want when we want it. So we're going to train our own drone folks and purchase the units and that kind of thing. But for us in our group, the prevailing sentiment is we get enough drones from our CMP and EMO when we need them. Now, I think we've had a member reach out saying, hey, I run a drone business, can I join and help? If they want to join and help and go through the processes to get properly vetted and certified, we'll use them. Yeah.
That was gonna be my next question. I have a friend of mine who's in the drones now, and we're gonna talk to him, because I think he'd be interested in doing that.
Yeah.
Now, what we should do is get everybody, all humans chipped like they do with the dogs.
Right.
Hey, if we can put everyone with the Project Lifesaver bracelet that are planning to get missing, it would cut the odds for just an awful lot. So.
There you go.
Yeah, I did see two, and I've been talking with someone I know in the civil air search space, where they have, I think they weren't targeted for looking for like lost fishing vessels, but they have like a fake cell phone tower that can dangle off of a Coast Guard plane. And your phone will try and connect that, oh, hey, someone's here. So I've inquired how that works in a wilderness setting. I know in BC on the ground side, although there's still a lot of helicopters out there, the ground search and rescue in BC have helicopters that can do that same thing, where they can say, hey, fly around this ski resort until you find the cell phone number, 555-1234. That's our guy. We find that cell phone, we know he's somewhere around here. We can hone in on him. So there's so much technology out there.
Yeah, essentially the way it works, it works as a pop-up tower. It's not connected to the rest of the network, right? But if you imagine if you're out way outside of cell phone reception, your battery hasn't died yet. I don't know what that's like. But your phone will connect to it. When they see that phone connect, they can respond direct to the phone texting. So we don't, to my knowledge, have that here in New Brunswick or available nearby. But it's again, as Brad talked about the emerging technologies, it's gonna get a lot more rescues, right? And Brad talked about how we're working with the Office of the Fire Marshal and the Association of Fire Chiefs. The biggest thing is at the end of the day, if you've got a structure fire happening in your jurisdiction and a missing person, well, the firefighters or somebody needs rescue, the firefighters can work both, but don't necessarily have the bodies to work. Right, so having that ability where if you've got to hike, 5 kilometers in, to package somebody and help them get out. You wanna have your resources ready for structure fire to, respond to the motor vehicle, everything else is under the umbrella.
And it's the opposite side as well, where we've talked again with the fire marshal, or, sort of the president of the Association of Fire Chiefs about large fire scenes where they're taking firefighters to go direct traffic, point fire trucks to the right part in the staging area. Especially when you've got volunteer departments that are struggling to maintain enough members to actually, do fire attack. He's like, it's heavy. He said it would be great to have us be able to go up and help them kind of marshal around the fire scene. Because then they can take the firefighters off of traffic duty and put them on fire attack or on rotation to cut down the wear and tear on the firefighters, so. Yeah, always look for new partnerships to make and ways we can not stretch the volunteers further, but yeah, teamwork, that's better.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
well, thanks so much.
Thank you very much for tonight and all the work that you do with your teams.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Okay, now on to the next item on the presentation, a letter to Finance Committee Chair, CRC mandate contributions. And I understand, we found that, Darcy Rogers is our alternate, isn't here this evening. The letter is within your, council package. Council, that's the one. Commission, wrong group, know your audience. Commission package. This was to be a presentation from the city. Everyone has had the chance to review this, and I guess I'll open it up to any conversations or communications on that point. Yes,
Just to start off, first of all, this became a board letter when I referred it. It was came to finance committee chair and helped them. And I reviewed the letter and said, I have nothing, there's nothing in the letter that I can respond to. Because in most cases, it was requiring finance committee or the board to decide not to follow the apportionment model or other models that were laid out in the act. So I was, I think the finance committee was basically in a catch-22 at that point. You read it, but really didn't want to say anything. You don't want to say yes or no, or maybe, and I think that's still around. I think this letter suggests that the Regional Service Delivery Act doesn't serve the city well, and they would like to see that changed. That's a fair question, and some of us, it doesn't serve that well either, and we might like to see some changes. Nonetheless, it's not the purview of this board. I don't feel to make those accommodations to any of the members at this point.
any other comments around the table?
I'm on the finance committee and I don't really know how this letter would pertain to finance committee, the board, or whatever in whole. It's if the city is not happy with the mandated lines or whatever, then they need to take that up with the province. And in my opinion, I just don't understand what this group could do with that. I mean, I've seen the letter way back when it became to our chair first, but then it came to the finance committee and onto the board. And I can't find the meat in it, I guess. Unfortunately.
Well, the issues we're gonna have is that they have such a heavy presentation in our group that we're headed for another disaster with the budget. And that, I've said all along that they're too heavy-handed in this group and that they don't belong in it. And, I'm just gonna stick by that, these were mandated by the province. We didn't sit around here and make them up. And I have no intention of trying to reinvent the wheel. So That's my feeling on it.
I agree with that. I agree also.
I look at the 3 points, and seriously, I'm not trying to belittle anybody or anything else, but if you take parking, they exceeded 700,000 parking. People pay for the parking. They pay for everything they do if they're not charging enough. Look at your own budget. Who's putting it together? Where are you getting the figures and facts? You wanna have, that whole aspect, that's nothing to do with anybody sitting around this table, only the people sitting around their administration table. If you go through, transportation, they have the buses, they have their own buses. Just heard on the radio, they're gonna get $15 million to get 5 new electric buses. That's their decision, not anybody sitting around this table. This whole letter, I'm just saying, they're crying, they shouldn't be crying to us. I don't think, and this whole budget aspect of, they pay so much because of the numbers that they have, that's why they have 7 votes. And that's why everybody around here has to, they stick together type thing and do the actual thing, but they have their budget. The capital region has their budget. You should work together with everybody, when I read the letter, I said, man, Mr. Hart, sounds like you got work to do, because you're not making any money on what people are paying for parking, so either increase the rates or cut the parking or do something. If you have that aspect, I'll just pick on that one thing, but that's what everybody does in their budget, they look at it, see where they can improve it and where they think. Everybody doesn't wanna see the last so many years, because assessments have gone up. They've kept the tax rate at the same amount. We're not gonna increase taxes because, people won't be happy with us, but we want everybody else to pay. We talked about user fees for the rinks, we were talking here before, that whole aspect, what they actually charge somebody to come in to use their facilities, but these people are coming into Fredericton. They're using their facilities, they're paying the dollars and cents, they're buying groceries and everything else, but then they want everything else to pay. So I'm not on their side, really. If I look at that letter, I'm saying somebody's not doing their job in the administration for our temperature.
Other comments around the table or online?
Just an observation. I know that the city of Fredericton wanted this to come before the board. They made it very plain they wanted on the agenda. The last sentence, I welcome the opportunity to further discuss our observations at the committee and board table. And there's no one here representing the city tonight, right? So I think it should be closed tonight and that's it. It doesn't come back before the board.
And Mr. Chair, through you to the directors and to your point, Director Wilson Shee. Mayor Rogers did reach out today and asked if it could be potentially moved to another meeting at another time. I did write back and explained that our next meeting is the 17th of October. It's dedicated to dealing with the analysis that Mary Kay is doing on the proposed amendments that came in that were received through the budget process. The meeting following that, subsequently, a week later, we're meeting to decide on the budget. If that's successful, then the meeting after that, well, not even if it's successful, then the meeting right after that, I believe is, it's the first Tuesday of November, which I believe is around the 5th of November. We have yet another meeting. We're kind of running short on time unless we delay the process that was agreed upon, so.
Thank you. Anything else around the table? I'll make myself as a director of the commission. I feel we're, local governance reform was, I'll say 50 years in the making. We're a year or two into this. We do have a role from an advocacy perspective that I see us playing as, representatives of our local communities, as well as together around this board table with reform, because it's still in reform. It is not complete. And I think we do have a role to play to listen to all of our members. And speak to the legislation that sits in front of us. And the mandates that sit in front of us. We have to follow the legislation. We cannot be happy with it. We cannot be happy that certain parts haven't happened as quickly as we'd like to them happen. And some of the mandates passed on to us, but this advocacy role, I myself take very seriously. And I think we have a good place to be in our commission to speak to some of the concerns we have around reform and some things that have or have not happened. And, I mean, Fredericton has spoken here. That's just some concerns, but we have legislation that sits in front of us that we have to abide by. And, my statements.
Back to, yeah, Dr. Micklin's point, we've already seen one RSC go under supervision. And I think we can expect that there may be others that go under supervision this year. And in those cases, financially, all communities will lose. The supervisor has one choice: the rule of law. So follow the act. And it would cost every community more money. And when we look at how our budget evolves and how we carefully think about what we're doing and what we're not doing and whether we should, that would all disappear. And so I think we've all got a lot of soul searching to do, I guess, as we try and win our battles in the next few weeks coming up to the budget and get the things lined up the way we want. But then we all have to make that decision. Are we going to stay in business, or are we going to hand someone else our business? Because last year was a threat. We understand the reality is here with us. There was, I would guess that the minister was under some pressure recently to act before the writ dropped, but I think they'll be every bit as eager afterwards to say those are the rules because of your point. It's 2 years yet.
2 years in, not even 2 years.
I didn't know that we were allowed to bring every loss that we had in our community to the table and ask for all you guys to pay for it, because who do I write that letter to?
I think we'll all start writing if that's the case.
Good point.
Mr. Chair, but there also has to be some give and take too.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's the whole thing about the process. That's all.
Not a whole lot of give and take with the province,
No,
unfortunately.
Well, that's the advocacy piece that I feel we can, you know, as a collective, we're given handed a deck to play with, legislations to play within. And there are things we can do.
Yeah, but there's things that we can do if they get them done. I mean, it went full bore for the first year when Denny and Len was the minister. And the deputy, both of them were running it good. And then suddenly, Len's not there. And then the deputy gets moved to education. So the two people that were key in making this work are passed on to two people that now has to learn the system. And nothing's been done. And after the election, there could be two more people that need to learn the system. So, like that Finn report, the only thing I gave Lane credit for, he took it off, and not like every other politician that put their hands on it, shake the dust and put it back on it. He actually did something. But he was the only one that wanted to do it. Because the new guy doesn't want to do it. Because he's been trying to do a financial reform here since it happened. It hasn't happened, so. I think we're stuck for another year and a half, spinning our wheels. At least.
Well, I see the commission, don't take this the wrong way, as a tool for us. It's a vehicle from which we get things done.
No question.
Something I know from my respective community, we wouldn't have the ability to do. So I want to use that to the best of my ability. So with everybody around this table, because we're all in similar situations at times. And there's, again, invisible line between us.
Mr. Chair, to the directors. In terms of that, I think, we have to, always be respectful of one another. We have to live our values. We have to look at, the guiding principles that we adopted together as a group. And if there's some way that we can all reach out, work together, what a region we'll have. We have a wonderful opportunity. We have a great tax base. We have growing population. We have, forward-thinking leadership around this table and within your staff. And when you look around and, hear this room tonight, you see a small portion of the staff that work hard every day to try to be part of this region, to build the region, and to do the right thing on behalf of the people that we serve. And I think, one of the biggest things that we have to do is try to come together as a team, try to come together as a board, and try to ensure that we're living our values and achieving the things that we want to achieve together. And, we had our meeting in January, and then we had another meeting in June. And then we're going to repeat that again so that we can continue to grow and build. And tonight, prior to the meeting, and I know not everyone could make it, we had some great conversation in here. Saw a lot of relationships being built, people exchanging ideas, sharing stories, doing things like that. We're going to continue to do more of that. We've heard what you want, and your team wants that for you, and we want it for ourselves. And they sound like a selfish point, but don't think that, when you see all those views after a week of the board meetings in the following few days, a lot of that oftentimes are interested public in terms of people that want to know what's happening at the regional level. A lot of times it's staff that want to know. And there's other RSCs that watch. We all watch one another. We were asked, to compare to one another to different RSCs. Well, we've got a lot of very, I always say, and I rinse and repeat this phrase a lot, pound for pound, dollar for dollar. This RSC is doing as much as anybody in this province, and we should be proud of that. And you should be proud of that through your leadership and your direction. And we should be proud of that as a team coming together. We've got a lot of talented, capable people. We're not trying to grow by too much. We're trying to do it in moderation. But to be able to achieve the mandates that we have before us, we have to come together as a team, and we have to have that clear direction so that we know where to take the ship. You guys steer it, we're going to take it there for us, point it in the direction. So I really hope that we can find a way forward together, and it's better when we're all together. We're as dependent on our biggest partner as the biggest partner is on each one of you and everyone around the table. It's a codependency, and we need one another in terms of that. So I think we have an opportunity before us, and I think we should be, gracious within that and try to help us. Director Powell said, try to have some give and take and try to be cordial with one another and to one another, and really try to understand one another's needs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just have one comment too, or not. I mean, listening to the young here at the table, and every one of us, we are different, small and large. I come from a very small one. We survive good in our community, we manage our money well, stuff like that, and we've never thought of going past our neighboring communities for help, for finances. I mean, I'm thinking like Marty, you get budget what you've got, same as in your home, you budget for what you got to pay, spend. And so, and I'm not saying, and again, like you saying, the services we pay for those, my kids played sports in Norma, we paid the services when they were playing hockey, when they were playing ball. We didn't see nothing wrong with that, we thought that's the way it should be. We did our part, but I mean, we're asking all the communities to come together to help the bigger community when they got the bigger tax base than we do. I mean, like every one of us know what it costs today, and I mean, and I think probably our community, Betty Junction, probably two of the smallest communities on the RSC, and I think we're managing and but when I see this letter like this, I would rather that would be for like neighboring community, ask them something like that. It's just the way I would be. Maybe I'm too proud of myself and my achievements that I would do that. But anyway, I know you work as a team, and you need to work as a team, but you gotta stop and think. Just because maybe they got a bigger part of the area, do they need to be the, how do I say this? It almost looks like, they got overpowered. You know what I mean, in a way. I'm not trying to go to limit, nothing, you know what I mean? I'm just looking at the overall picture, and I think every one of us are around this table. And my concern is, where are we gonna go with this? And where is this page gonna go down the road? Is it gonna get bigger? Is it bigger? Are we all, and some of our smaller LSDs, are like big as well, and just a thought, and I'm just listening to your concerns, and I'm thinking, I agree, we have to work together, we have to be a team, and I think we've been doing really good. I've been on this since day one, and I think Bob probably pretty close, and.
I am.
Yeah, so, and I've seen a lot of changes, and I've been very satisfied with the way it's going right now, and I think we have a real good team. So we need to play as a team, but also we can't contribute one part of the team that much. That's just my thought.
I believe that the city of Fredericton might have a perception that there's unfairness going on, and I think we need to listen to that and, work with them on what their perceived issues are. We all have issues in our communities about what we think is unfair, and obviously they think something is unfair, so, I think we should listen to them and work with them and see if we can help.
I think that is a fair point, and perhaps how people read things, everybody reads things differently. That's goes to the point I'm talking about, the advocacy, some of the issues are being taken with legislation in the province. We all have some issues with some of the things that have happened during reform. I would say we talked about it around the board. It's not finished yet. And that's where that whole team piece of it, as a commission, I think we do have to listen.
But I think one comment, a couple of comments I guess I've heard, is to do with our budget as far as the money that we get from the government. And you're good at getting it, by the way. I'll give you that credit, because some don't get it, what we've got. The key is what happens.
Strike that from the record.
No, hey, I calls them the way it's always have. What you see is what you get. But what happens when that dries up, and where does that money come from? I think that is a big thing with two of our bigger people.
Of course, so sometimes it sounds to be about money. But it's not. 2 weeks ago, sitting here, we talked about a new building. We talked about an increase in rental cost of, well, it's a big number. It's a significant number when you've got 6,000 square feet for $27. And the city of Fredericton, the representative put the motion and supported the motion for that increase in the budget. And at the same time, we would have heard comments if we were talking the $11,000 to the $15,000 for a committee, that would have been an issue. So it's hard for me to believe that it's about the money. It's about I think it's about power and authority over that we seem to have an authority over their budget. And I think that's more of a sticking point, because in that case, they placed the motion, they made the motion, they supported the motion. And it was one of the most significant increases in our budget. And it's for a long time. And that's all. I guess it's not always what it seems. I agree with and Director Sweeney that it's good to listen to them and we should understand. We may not be in a position to accommodate. That's.
I think it's great to listen to them, but I can't be sympathetic with the rules being the way the rules are. We all live by the same rules. And if you don't wanna live within the rules, then I'm not gonna listen to you. And so if you wanna change the rules, go change the rules. I'll talk to whomever, but I can't change the rules. So I don't necessarily agree with that approach. Like, I think that if I have a problem with the way it's laid out, I should deal with that. I'm not gonna make my problem your problem. And that's what this seems to me. That's what I feel.
Chair, if I may, Director Borsa, in terms of the funding and the long-term liability, fiscal reform will address that as well, and we'll know, maybe we'll have more certainty at the end of that, I don't know. But I did check with colleagues from around the province, my counterparts from around the province, and nobody was under any understanding other than that the RSSF funding that we received, the 50-50 funding, is in legislation and it was meant for the long term. That was the common understanding when I spoke to my colleagues from around the province. I didn't speak to all of them, but I'll say I spoke to the majority of them. And they were fairly confident that even if there were to be a change, there would be a lead time of, hopefully 2 to 3 years so that we could, change in how we do that in that direction.
Okay.
But I think that'll have to be dealt with through the fiscal reform, however that comes out. But certainly at this time, we have a letter on file from the minister to our chair, who's sitting as the director this evening, that was sent, that was approved by this table. And the letter came back from the minister saying the RSSF is in legislation. And basically, because we asked if there was an end date or anything proof of that end date, and in the letter, and there was nothing came back to that effect. So it's in the legislation. That's all that the answer was. So.
That's extremely important for us to take roles like that, to pressure that level of government to allow us to do what we've been asked to do on their legislation passed by the government.
Good.
Okay, if there's no further comments or questions. That's the last item on our agenda. I ask for a motion for adjournment.
Second it, Bob, all Michael.
Before you adjourn, so what's the outcome, this letter? What do we,
It's a letter.
and it's gonna stay as a letter? Like, there's no action, they don't have to respond?
Letter to the finance committee.
It was already responded to
Yeah,
once.
it was responded to on, sorry.
We responded
We
to it.
responded to it on August the 2nd.
Yeah.
There was a response to the letter from Director Corey as chair of the finance committee,
Okay.
referring it back to the board. But
And there was an ask to be on the agenda to, as you
Yes.
stated.
So it's on the agenda, it was discussed, and that's it.
We're on to our next meeting on October 17th, which we know next week to be in.
So tonight is the end of this letter,
The
right?
letter, yes.
Thank you. I move to adjourn.
Oh, yeah,
I know.
someone second it.
I
All
know.
those in favor?